We all think about safety, right, in our day-to-day lives.
Sure.
Locking doors, checking alarms.
Sure, the basics. Maybe looking over your shoulder sometimes.
Exactly. But there's this whole market built around, well, providing that feeling of security. And today, we're diving into one part of it you might not expect.
Bulletproof backpacks.
Bulletproof backpacks. It's a market that's growing. Quietly, maybe, but definitely quickly.
Yeah, and it gives us this really interesting window into how safety concerns, or maybe perceived concerns, turn into actual consumer spending.
Totally. We're working from a recent market research report here. It really crunches the numbers on this globally.
So our mission today is basically to unpack those numbers, figure out what's driving the growth, and, where it's happening most.
Right. We want to give you a clear picture of this market segment. Maybe one you didn't even know was, well, this developed. See the key figures, what they might be telling us.
Okay, so where do we start? The big picture.
Yeah, let's do the global overview from the source first. What does that look like?
Okay, well, the main takeaway is pretty robust expansion. The report says the global market for these backpacks was worth $169.5 million. That was back in 2021.
Right, $169.5 million. And it's definitely not just sitting there. The projection for 2025.
Jumps up to $255.4 million.
Okay.
But then look further out. By 2033, the projection is $580.1 million.
Wow, $580 million. That's quite a leap over about a decade.
It really is. That translates to a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of 10.8%.
10.8%, so double digits. For personal protective gear like this, that seems pretty strong, signals real adoption.
Yeah, and the source gives a few reasons for that acceleration. One is just rising safety concerns worldwide.
Okay, makes sense.
Then it specifically mentions faster adoption among certain groups like students, commuters, professionals too.
Interesting.
Plus, the materials themselves are getting better, more advanced protective materials, and, just more people being aware these things even exist and are, well, available.
It really makes you wonder where are those concerns and that adoption hitting hardest. The report breaks it down by region, which is where you see some surprising differences.
Definitely. Should we start with North America? The report flags it as the biggest market currently by volume.
Okay, North America, number.
So $68 million value in 2021, projected to hit $100.9 million by 2025.
And then looking out to 2033.
$225.5 million. The CAGR there is 10.6%, so very close to that global average we saw.
Right. And inside North America, the U.S. obviously dominates in size.
Yeah, the U.S. was $56.3 million in 2021. It's projected to climb to $178.8 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of 10.3%.
Okay, 10.3%. But now compare that. Canada starts smaller, right? $5.1 million in 21.
Mm-hmm. But its growth rate, the CAGR, is projected a bit higher, 11.4%. Reaching $18.5 million by 2033.
And Mexico, even higher growth.
That's right. Mexico started at $6.6 million in 2021, but it's looking at a 12.3% CAGR. That's the highest in North America, taking it to $28.2 million by 2033.
12.3%. Yeah, that suggests whatever's driving this, it's hitting particularly hard there, or the market's catching up fast.
Seems like it. Okay, moving across to Europe, also a pretty significant player.
Yeah, what are the numbers there?
Europe was $32 million back in 2021, expected to grow to $106.2 million by 2033.
And the growth rate?
The overall regional CAGR is 10.5%. So again, very much in line with North America and the global picture.
Okay. And specific countries in Europe?
Well, the report calls out the big economies. Germany and the UK, they show solid growth. CAGR is around 11%. Germany's 11%. UK is slightly higher at 11.3%.
Starting from places like, what, $5.3 million for Germany, $3.2 million for the UK in 2021?
Exactly. And then you have countries like France and Italy. Their growth rates are strong, but just a little lower, around 9.9% CGR for both.
Russia.
Russia's right around 10%. Spain, similar, 10.1%.
What seems interesting there is how consistent it is across the board.
Yeah.
Even like Luxembourg, a smaller market mentioned.
Yeah, Luxembourg is listed with a 10.7% CAGR. Small volume, obviously, but still that solid growth trend.
It shows it's not just concentrated in the biggest places.
Right. And actually, the category labeled Rest of Europe shows the highest growth rate within Europe at 11.8%.
Huh. So broad adoption across other countries, too.
Seems that way. Okay, shall we head over to Asia Pacific? The report calls that region's growth landscape dynamic.
Dynamic. Okay, let's see if the numbers match the description.
They definitely seem to. The value there was $53.7 million in 2021.
Right.
But the projection for 2033 is $205.6 million.
Wow, that's a huge jump. bigger than Europe's projected total.
Yeah, and the regional CAGR reflects that, 11.6%. That's noticeably higher than North America or Europe.
Okay, dynamic checks out. And within Asia Pacific, China must be a big piece.
It is. China leads in size, expected to go from $20.7 million in 21 to $80.8 million by 33. That's an 11.8% CAGR.
Strong. But didn't the report highlight India particularly?
It did. The source points to India as having the highest national growth rate in the whole global market they studied.
Seriously, what's the number?
India started at $11 million in 2021. It's projected to hit $46.1 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of 12.4%.
12.4%. Yeah, that's really flying. Suggests a market that's, I don't know, really taking off right now.
Absolutely. Elsewhere in the region, Japan and South Korea also show strong growth. TAGRs over 10%. Japan's 10.9%. South Korea's 11.4%.
Australia.
Also strong 11.4% CAGR. Same as South Korea.
And there was a Southeast Asia group.
Yes, and that group actually matches China's growth rate, 11.8% AGR, growing from about $2.7 million to 11.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
8% AGR, growing from about $2.7 million to $11 million over that period.
Okay, so Asia Pacific really lives up to that dynamic label. Lots of high growth across the board.
Definitely. Now, South America, the report describes it as a steadily growing market.
Steadily growing. Okay.
Brazil leads there.
Yeah.
It's projected to go from $2.8 million in 2021 to $9.4 million by 2033, with a 10.6% CAGR.
Pretty much aligned with the global average then.
Exactly. And other countries mentioned Argentina, Colombia, Chile, they're also showing solid growth, mostly around 10 to 10.5% CAGR.
Any outliers?
Peru is noted as a bit lower for the region, but still respectable at 9.6% CAGR. So steady seems like the right word.
Okay. That leaves the Middle East and Africa.
Right. And here the report suggests more modest growth, though still consistent compared to the other big regions.
Modest? Like what kind of numbers?
Well, countries like Egypt and Turkey are listed with CAGRs around 7.7% to 7.8%.
Okay, so noticeably slower than the double digits we saw elsewhere.
Yeah. And the category rest of the Middle East actually has the lowest KGR mentioned anywhere in the report, 6.6%.
6.6%. So while it's growing there too, the pace is just different, much slower than, say, Asia Pacific or even North America.
Exactly. It paints a picture of varied regional speeds.
Okay, so we've gone around the globe, seen the snapshot, seen the regional details. Let's try and connect these dots. What does it all add up to?
Well, the big overarching trend is clear. This market is expanding significantly pretty much everywhere, and the report ties that back to those key drivers. Safety worries, better materials, more awareness.
But it's not the same everywhere. North America, yeah, it's the biggest right now in terms of dollars, volume.
Right, but Asia Pacific is where the pace is fastest. That highest regional CAGR tells a story.
And within those regions, you see specific countries really popping. India, China, Mexico. The report flagged them for particularly high growth rates.
Yeah, and that high growth in specific places, it suggests those drivers we talked about, the safety concerns, the adoption by students, commuters, professionals, the awareness, maybe those factors are hitting harder or faster in those populations.
Or maybe the market was just less developed there to begin with, so there's more room for that rapid catch-up growth.
Could be a mix of both. It definitely highlights how the feeling of safety, or maybe the lack of it, and the perceived need for this kind of gear, it really varies, reflects different concerns, maybe different levels of market maturity across the world.
Exactly. It's kind of fascinating how a product like a backpack can become this tangible measure of how people are feeling about risk in their everyday environments.
Yeah, going to school, commuting, just being out in public spaces, the numbers for these backpacks sort of mirror those anxieties or preparedness levels.
So, wrapping up this deep dive on the bulletproof backpack market, what's the core takeaway?
I'd say it's a picture of a market growing fast globally, clearly driven by people's concerns about safety and the fact these products are just more available now. But, and this is key, the speed and the scale of that growth look pretty different depending on where you are in the world.
Right. And maybe here's a final thought, something for you listening to chew on, especially thinking about the report mentioning students, commuters, professionals using these. This rapid growth, particularly in some regions, it suggests that ordinary people feel they're facing risks, or at least perceive risks, in their daily routines, in a way maybe they didn't 10 years ago. What does this widespread consumer choice tell us about how personal security and maybe anxiety is evolving in different parts of the world today?
That's a really pertinent question the data brings up.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Okay, let's unpack this. You came to us looking for a deep dive, maybe a shortcut to getting really informed on something that unfortunately feels increasingly relevant right now, personal safety.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a stack of sources here that seems to cut right to the heart of one specific evolving market.
That's right. This deep dive is focused entirely on insights we've pulled from excerpts of a report by Cognitive Market Research. It's specifically titled Bulletproof Backpacks, Market Dynamics, and Emerging Trends.
Got it. Okay, so our mission today, working from this source material, is to figure out what's genuinely pushing this market forward, what major hurdles it's facing, and maybe where things are heading.
Right.
The core question we're tackling, based on this report, is how is this market growing and changing in, well, direct response to global safety concerns?
Okay, let's start with the big picture the report paints, the market overview and, what's driving it. It characterizes this as a rapidly growing and, frankly, a socially critical sector.
And the reason for that rapid growth is, unfortunately, pretty clear, isn't it? The report points directly to rising concerns over personal safety.
Absolutely. Specifically, it highlights the fear stemming from incidents in educational institutions and public spaces globally.
Mm-hmm.
It does make a point of mentioning North America,
Yeah.
where events like school shootings have tragically fueled a really stark and immediate demand for personal protective gear.
What's interesting is how this product fits into that fear. I mean, it's not like body armor you wear openly on the street. It's integrated into something common.
Precisely. And the appeal, as the report notes, is that it's a non-intrusive safety measure. It tries to balance protection with portability.
Uh-huh.
And this makes it attractive across a surprisingly wide spectrum, from children and students right through to everyday professionals. It offers that extra layer of defense, but without the visible look or like the bulk you associate with traditional armor.
Right. It's protection that tries to blend in.
Exactly. Blending in.
And that seems key, which leads us to another major driver the report identifies, the growing use by law enforcement and private security.
Yes. Their need is often for exactly that discrete protection. The report emphasizes the dual-purpose function. It works as a regular carry bag, but can instantly become a mobile ballistic shield. So for roles like undercover agents or maybe private security in unpredictable urban environments, that ability to be instantly protected without drawing attention is, well, invaluable.
So, okay, it's driven by fear and this need for discrete utility, but the report also talks about technology enabling this. What are the advancements they highlight there?
Yeah, this is where material science really comes into play. The report specifically calls out innovations in materials like aramid fibers, think Kevlar,
Right, Kevlar.
and UHMWPE, that's ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, along with other advanced composites. These aren't the heavy, rigid materials of the past.
Oh, okay. So they're making them significantly lighter and more flexible. Is that the idea?
Exactly. That improved comfort and flexibility is crucial. It makes them far more practical and appealing for users, especially, say, younger ones or commuters who are carrying them for long periods.
Right.
Technology isn't just making them protective, it's making them wearable, which directly expands who might consider buying one.
Okay, so we've got clear demand fueled by safety fears, specific utility for security roles, and tech making them, well, better products. That sounds like straightforward growth, but the report makes it clear there are significant challenges. Let's look at what the report calls the market restraints.
Right. And the most immediate and perhaps most significant hurdle the report details is the high cost.
Right.
Ballistic protection is inherently expensive to manufacture. You have costly raw materials, the rigorous process of meeting safety standards, extensive testing. All of that pushes the price point dramatically higher than a standard backpack.
And what's the consequence of that high price, according to the report? Does it talk about that?
It does. It severely limits the market scale. The people who might feel the most urgent need for this type of protection, perhaps low-income families in high-crime areas or areas impacted by...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Low-income families in high-crime areas or areas impacted by violence are often the ones priced out. It also hinders growth in developing countries where disposable income is generally lower.
That creates a difficult accessibility problem, doesn't it? Another big restraint the report mentions is the legal and regulatory landscape.
Yeah, this is fascinatingly complex. In some regions, The laws around civilian ownership or import, or even just the simple classification of these items are incredibly unclear.
How so? Like, what are they classed as?
Well, are they personal protective equipment? Are they just luggage with extra features? This ambiguity, the report suggests, creates uncertainty for both the companies trying to sell them and the people trying to buy them.
Uh-huh.
And that slows down distribution and makes people hesitant.
And then there's a challenge that feels particularly critical for the user, the consumer education gap.
Yes, this is a major point in the report. It states that many users simply don't understand key technical specifications, like the protection ratings. The most common rating you usually see is NIJ Level de Ferret.
Okay, let's pause there because you see that mentioned everywhere. What exactly is NIJ Level Day 3A, and why is the lack of understanding such a problem?
Good point. The NIJ rating, that's the National Institute of Justice standard in the U.S. It's a key measure. Level 5 3A is designed primarily to stop handgun rounds, typically up to a .44 Magnum.
Okay, handgun rounds.
Crucially, as the report implies, it is not generally designed to stop rifle rounds.
Okay, so understanding that distinction is absolutely vital. That seems critical.
It is. The report highlights that a dangerous misconception exists where users falsely believe these backpacks offer protection against high-powered rifle threats, which at the typical level A3 they often do not.
Wow.
This misinformation doesn't just mean a poor purchase. It creates a perilous false sense of security for the person carrying it.
Right, someone might take risks they shouldn't, believing they're protected against a threat the backpack just isn't rated for. And it's a double bind, too. The cost is high, and people might not even understand what they're actually paying for in terms of real protection.
Exactly. The report frames this as a really significant challenge that the market needs to address for, informed consumer choices and just basic safety.
Okay, so we've looked at the drivers, the necessity side, and the real challenges holding things back. But the report also shifts focus to what's coming next, some positive and maybe surprising emerging trends.
Yes, despite the hurdles, there's definitely clear innovation happening. One trend that stands out is the focus on child-friendly designs.
I saw that mentioned. Integrating the protective layers into backpacks that feature like popular characters, bright colors, making them look, well, like normal kids' backpack.
The report suggests the goal there is to make them less alarming for children. They may be easier for parents to get kids to carry them.
Yeah.
And perhaps make them feel less like a constant reminder of danger and more just part of their regular school gear. It's a challenging balance to strike, for sure, but the trend is certainly there.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, I thought. The integration of smart technologies.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how these backpacks are evolving beyond just being protective gear. The report notes they're incorporating features like USB charging ports, RFID blocking pockets for data security, and even integrated intelligent organization systems.
So they're becoming a blend of modern utility and defense. That seems like a play to appeal to a broader, perhaps younger and more tech-savvy user base who value convenience alongside safety. Does the report suggest this shifts how people perceive the product itself?
Well, the implication is that by adding these features, they become more integrated into daily life, less solely defined by the ballistic panel inside, and more by their overall functionality. It's an attempt to normalize them, you could say, through added convenience.
And finally, the report talks about collaborations, partnerships between manufacturers and who else? Schools.
The report highlights rising alliances between manufacturers and institutions like schools, yes, and also corporations.
Schools and corporations partnering to procure bulletproof backpacks. Really?
Precisely. These collaborations aim to increase accessibility, often through bulk procurement, which can lower costs, or maybe even subsidize pricing in some cases. The report suggests this is a way to bring this type of discrete personal protection into environments like educational institutions or corporate security teams more readily again, attempting to increase availability without necessarily heightening fear.
So if we try and connect this all together based on this deep dive into the report, the market for bulletproof backpacks is clearly operating at this really complex intersection. You've got the pressing necessity driven by societal safety concerns meeting technological innovation, but also running smack into significant challenges around accessibility, regulation, and critically fundamental consumer understanding.
It certainly is. The report points to a market that is definitely evolving, perhaps shifting from a purely niche, sort of tactical item towards something considered more broadly, by some at least, as an essential item in a world with these heightened safety anxieties.
And for that evolution and growth to continue, the report makes it quite clear Addressing that affordability gap, bringing clarity to the regulations, and critically closing that consumer education gap about what the products actually do, or maybe more importantly, what they don't do, is absolutely vital.
Absolutely vital for its future and for public trust.
Right.
Which I think raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider as you reflect on what we've unpacked today from this report. In a world where personal safety anxieties are driving demand for protective gear integrated into everyday items like these backpacks, how do we navigate the ethical implications, the accessibility issues, and the information challenges this market trend presents? And maybe what does the very existence and rise of this market fundamentally say about our society's current priorities and fears?
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.